Welcome to Rivalry Week. We are here, Calculated Risk Podcast. I'm with Kelley Ford. As always, I am Tyler Shoemaker. I'm so excited to do this podcast. I'm so excited to watch some football Saturday. This is going to be awesome. There are so many good games. It was really hard for us to narrow down which games we were going to kind of deep dive on and which games we were going to put in our rapid fire. So no disrespect to any that didn't make it in the marquee segment. It was just a really, really tough call. Obviously, we had to have the game in there, had to have the Iron Bowl, so it was really just a toss up for that third spot. Kelley, initial thoughts here on the slate before we dive in.
I mean, Tyler, initial thoughts are this is the week that we live for, right? I mean, the regular season is paramount in college football, and this week is the apex rivalry week. It doesn't get any better. This is why I love this sport, for these games, for these moments. It's awesome. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It kind of stinks now that I'm, trying to do different podcasts, writing, keep up with the ratings, like all that stuff. As I've tried to grow a presence in the college football space, which has been very fun, and doing the show with you has been a big part of that. It kind of stinks that it's also Thanksgiving week, which it always is, but now I'm doing these other things. So we condense it all the way down, and we're trying to pack in so much stuff into the front of this week so folks can go enjoy what's my favorite holiday. I mean, how do you beat football, family, and food, right? Like that, to me, that's a no-brainer. And you get the Egg Bowl to cap it off at night. But that's the only thing that makes it tough, is trying to jam all this stuff. Because if anything, I need more time this week because of what you said with all these great games. This should be like, we need the week one like schedule, like the dates that we play. We need that approach in rivalry week so that we can lay everything out and give everything its due credit and diligence. But as you said, we had to make choices. I'm very excited for this week. And dude, I love it. I can't tell you enough how much I love this week.
Yeah, we are definitely on a condensed time schedule. We had to change our schedule a little bit. I know I'm recording 3 podcasts today. Had to write an article today. I've got a big. I did want to mention this before we dive in. I'm doing a huge betting preview for focusing on the game, Ohio State, Michigan, full betting preview. So I'm going to be giving out a bunch of like Ohio State friendly bets, a bunch of Michigan friendly bets, so that we'll be diving in props and all that. So fans on both sides that want to be invested in it as well, aside from emotionally. I'm going to be writing that up on vcent.com on Friday, so definitely check that out. It's going to be awesome. All right, well, let's get into it. Iron Bowl is going to kick us off. Kelley, I will let you do the honors.
I love this game, Tyler. It's one of my favorites every single year. I'm not even from Alabama or from the South in general. It just means a ton in the college football world. It just means more, you might say, in this game. It always has. It always will, in all seriousness. I have Alabama minus 12.5. It's an 81% win expectancy for the Tide. Alabama's number 6 in my power ratings, with the number 6 defense and the number 16 offense. But take the numbers out of it for a second. Just Jalen Milroe has been playing really well for a month plus now. This team seems to be humming right along, as we've seen from Nick Saban coach teams time and time again, especially this time of year. So I just think Alabama, with everything still in front of them and you can find a path where it's questionable if they make the playoff, right? But they know they need to take care of business if they're going to give themselves the best chance. That starts here this week. Georgia's on the horizon in Atlanta. If the opponent was any other team than Auburn, I'd have the Tide kind of on upset alert this week for a look-ahead spot. But this is the Iron Bowl. There's no way Alabama is looking ahead in this one. Speaking of looking ahead, though, Tyler, that simply has to be what happened to Auburn last week. I mean, they fell to New Mexico State at home by 3 touchdowns. Yeah. As a result, the Tigers fell 2.5 points in my power ratings this week. That was the second biggest downgrade of any team this week. If you fall 2.5 points, we talked about this on the show this year. If you fall 2.5 points from week 2 to week 3 or week 3 to week 4, not really a big deal. It's pretty common, actually, for teams that have a good or a bad week. 2.5 points this late in the season from week 12 to week 13. That's huge. Like that's a massive downgrade for one team to experience in 1 week. So the model certainly took a dim view of Auburn's performance last week against New Mexico State. Ranking number 21 nationally, I do expect the Auburn defense to be able to hang in there with this Alabama offense, even though they are playing very well. Even though this game is on the Plains, it's the number 70 Tiger defense that causes serious concerns for me and for the model. Bottom line, I have Alabama minus 12.5. It's a 19% chance that Auburn wins the Iron Bowl for the first time since before the COVID-19 pandemic, Tyler. It's been a minute since Auburn was able to get it done in this game.
Yeah, I'm looking. So a couple things you mentioned there. One, I need to take a victory lap. New Mexico State plus 24. I wrote that up in my best bets article last week. They win outright. Maybe I should have bet them
Sprinkle
minus
some on that
24.
money
Would have been
line.
closer. Yeah, yeah. I don't need, honestly. I'm so mad. I don't even know what the money line was, but I'm sure it was probably like plus 5,000 or something crazy.
Outrageous. Yeah.
So that being said, I do think you're probably getting, from a betting perspective, you're probably getting some value here on Auburn. I was just taking a quick peek at the bet splits that we talked about. 83% of the bets right now at DraftKings are on Alabama minus the 14 and a half. So interesting, interesting note there. But as far as how my numbers see this game, Kelley, we're pretty much aligned. Definitely on the Alabama side of things. I've got Alabama number 8 power rated, Auburn's number 38. Um, in terms of how these teams match up on each side of the ball, I've got the Alabama defense number 4 in the country, offense number 16, right where you have them. The Auburn defense definitely the strength of the team. You know, despite letting Diego Pavia go crazy on him last week, Auburn defense number 19 in the country, but their offense is number 76, and that's going to be the problem for them in this game. Honestly, I think from a betting perspective, the Auburn team total is probably worth team total under is probably worth a look here because they're going to have a hard time scoring points here. So all in all, I project this Alabama minus 12. So we're pretty much in line there, Kelley. And I project the total at 46 and a half. Line currently sitting at around 49 there. All right. Any other thoughts there before we move on?
No, I mean, again, super excited for this game. I could talk about it for an hour, but I know we've got other ones we got to get to. So the kick six, to me, this game always, you can't think about it without the kick six. I'm not suggesting we're going to get something like that in this game, like a moment like that. But to me, when you have that as part of your tradition, it doesn't really matter what the spreads are. It doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter what happens to these teams moving forward. When that's part of your tradition, this game will always be held in very high regard, in my opinion, when I think about the college football landscape nationally. So that my closing thought is I don't care what the spread is. Love this game.
Yep. Yep. I echo that. Moving on, Civil War. I don't even know if they call it that anymore, but we know what we're talking about. Oregon hosting Oregon State. Oregon number 2 in my power ratings. Oregon State's number 16. On each side of the ball here, Oregon is better. And you know, from a spot standpoint too, Oregon State had the tough loss last week to Washington in a game that a lot of people thought Oregon State was going to win. I know my numbers had Oregon State, I think, by a point in that game. They lose by 2. They give up a safety in that game. So just kind of a tough break for Oregon State. It's kind of a tough spot for them. Uh, Oregon's offense number 2 in the country, defense number 8. So the top 10 units on both sides for me. Oregon State's offense number 18 and Oregon State's defense number 27. So Oregon State's very good on both sides of the ball. They're very balanced. They're just not as good and balanced as Oregon is. So I think they're going to have trouble here. I project Oregon minus 13. The line as of Wednesday morning was 13 and a half. The over under currently sitting at 62 and a half. I only project 56 points in this game. So there might be some value in the under here. Kelley, what do you have on this game?
First, real quick, the biggest casualty of conference realignment, in my opinion, even more so than geographic conferences, which I love. We're way past that. Like I that's gone. But it's rivalry games. As far as I know, this is the final scheduled edition of the Civil War. I know they don't call it that anymore. I do. Most college football fans do. It truly is a tragedy that we don't have this game. I was so happy to see the Apple Cup extended their series for at least 5 more years. Like
Yep.
we need that. Bedlam, Civil War. We need you guys to figure out how to make this work because college football fans deserve the opportunity to watch this game every single year and to participate in this game at the stadiums every single year. I love this game. I'm going to savor it more than ever this year, knowing the uncertainty of its future. From a power rating standpoint, I have Oregon minus 13. It's an 82% win expectancy. Tyler, I think starting next year, I'm going to start including a, quote, form section on my team dashboards. And basically what that's going to do, it's going to show a team's, like, how much a team's power rating has changed in either direction, positive or negative, in the past week, the past 2 weeks, the past month, and maybe like since the preseason. Maybe that's like the 4 tiers. Why am I sharing that? One, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a good ad. But 2, and more importantly, because Oregon would grade out very well in the form section if I had it this year. You could argue no team has played better in the past month than the Ducks, other than maybe Georgia, who's really rounded into form here down the stretch. Oregon's number 4 in my power ratings. They have the number 1 offense for the 4th straight week. They now have a season best number 15 on the defensive side of the ball. This team is firing on all cylinders, and it's happening at the right time. This is when you want to be playing your best football. Give yourself a chance to win these games into December and beyond. For Oregon State, the Beavers' power rating actually improved slightly following last week's close loss at home to Washington. At number 13, Tyler, I actually give Oregon State's offense the slightest of edges against that Oregon defense, but the number one ranked Ducks offense at home, no less. Austin's a very tough place to play, is likely to be too much for the Beaver defense in this game, a unit that I have ranked number 27. This game, it's a huge rivalry, no future meetings on the books, 2 TD spread. It screams classic college football chaos game. Look no farther than Bedlam just a couple weeks ago. We saw that. I won't be surprised if Oregon State keeps it close late into the fourth quarter or even finds a way to win this game. Remember, they won this game last year, but the model isn't picking an upset in this game. If it was, I'd be questioning the model and its validity. Bottom line, I've got Oregon minus 13. It's an 18% chance that Oregon State wins back-to-back games in this rivalry for the first time since 2006, 2007. It's been a long time since Oregon State got them twice in a row. Oregon will know that as well.
Yeah, you're right. I think Oregon is playing as well as anybody in the country right now, maybe outside of Georgia. One thing as we've gone through 2 games now, our numbers are really in alignment now. Like we're like within a half a point on our projections through these first 2 games. So that's good to see. Especially when you consider some of the big discrepancies we had earlier in the season. So it's nice that the numbers are kind of rounding into form here. All right, the big one, the game. Michigan hosting Ohio State. Kelley, I'll let you do the honors on this one,
dude.
I know you're chomping at the bit. I'm gonna let you do it.
Wow, you're very kind. Okay, I'll take it. I was not gonna have any qualms if you did it. Okay, let me get a breath. This game, it's the game, as you said. Watchability score, Tyler, of 9.9 out of 10. It's my number one game of the entire regular season by this metric. As a college football fan, I could not be more excited about this game. But as an Ohio State fan, as we're stated on the podcast as being, I could not be more nervous for this game. This is the first time since 2018 that I've had Ohio State, by my model, as a projected underdog going into a regular season game. Ohio State's lost a couple of regular season games since then, but they've never been a projected underdog by my model going into that game in the regular season since 2018. I do believe it's the first time that Ohio State or that Michigan's been favored over Ohio State since 2018, maybe as well. Before I get into the predictive analytics, just really quickly, a look at the resumes here. I know the committee has Georgia number 1. I have the Bulldogs number 3 am I most deserving. We've talked about that at length before. Go back and look at previous episodes for more context on that. Ohio State and Michigan, those are the 2 teams that have the biggest gripes with the committee, in my opinion, because those are the 2 teams that I think are being pushed down one spot too many because of the Bulldogs. Michigan, number 2 in my most deserving rankings for the second consecutive week. The Wolverines are number 6 in my record achievement metric. There's only a 5% chance that the average top 25 team would be undefeated against Michigan's schedule. What's even more impressive than that is the Wolverines are number 1 in my relative scoring margin metric. They're outscoring their opponents by 14.5 points per game, more than would be expected of the average top 25 team against Michigan's schedule. But Ohio State can do you one better, Michigan. They're number 1 in my most deserving metric. They have been for 5 straight weeks now. The Buckeyes are number 2 in record achievement, number 3 in relative scoring margin. The winner of this game will be my number 1 most deserving team heading into the conference championship game weekend. The question is, will the committee move this team to number 1 as well? We can talk about that probably on the recap episode. For now, let's look at the predictive metrics. Ohio State might be number 1 of the most deserving, but it's Michigan that tops my power ratings for the 5th consecutive week, Tyler. It's the first time, as I said, since 2018 that Ohio State's an underdog in a regular season game or to Michigan. I have Michigan minus 3.5. It's a 61% win expectancy in this game. Michigan has the nation's number 1 defense. Ohio State's defense is number 2. Michigan has the nation's number 6 offense. Ohio State's is only, I'm putting that in air quotes, number 17. It's worth noting that is the lowest I've had the Ohio State offense power rated all year. For the model, that difference right there, plus the fact that this game is in Ann Arbor, is how I get to that minus 3.5 that Michigan's favored by the model. But for me, Tyler, as a fan, my last thoughts on this, admittedly, I'm a biased one. I actually feel better about Ohio State in this game in 2023 than I did about Ohio State in last year's game, which was in Columbus, and the Buckeyes were favored by Vegas and by my numbers. Like, it sounds weird, but I actually feel better about Ohio State's chances this year than I did last year. Here's why. I just feel like that Ryan Day learned a lot about how to call a game with what I'd call measured aggression against that Georgia team last year. And Kyle McCord is not CJ Stroud. He doesn't have CJ Stroud anymore. I still think there are instances that are going to present themselves in this game in which Day can dial it up for a Marvin Harrison and the other Ohio State skill position players. And the weather's not going to be conducive to it. I know that. I just think Day has learned what he needs to do in a game like this. I think he's going to try to implement that better this year than he ever has before. Will it work? That's, of course, what we're going to find out. On the defensive side, though, and this may be even more important, Jim Knowles has taken a different approach this year. He said as much. He isn't going for those knockout blows on third downs. He's not going for the knockout sack or the big play interception or turnover. He's just sitting back. He's giving you nothing over the top. He's daring the offense to beat his team play after play, consistently moving the ball down the field without making a mistake. No team's been able to do that yet, but Michigan does present the biggest test for both Ohio State offense and defense so far this season. So it will be tested for sure. Something inside me just tells me I feel good, which actually makes me hate it even more. But bottom line, the model has Michigan minus 3.5. It's a 39% chance that Ohio State earns its first win in the game since 2019. Remember, Tyler, we didn't play this game in 2020, and Michigan's won the last two. It's been since 2019 that Ohio State has got the win against Michigan. So a long time.
Yeah, and this game, so I'm going to run through my numbers the way we normally do with these other games, but I'm also going to caveat because whether, and I don't want to get into all the off-field stuff, but the fact of the matter is, since basically over the last 4 games, we'll say, so since Connor Stallions was suspended and then fired, and then Jim Harbaugh got suspended, the Michigan metrics have been noticeably different. And they were so noticeably different that I did a deep dive this week. So I'm going to run through my normal numbers, and then I'm going to give my numbers weighing those last 4 games even more heavily than I normally would, because we should expect that team to be more what's going to show up on Saturday than the team that was playing Bowling Green early in the season with Connor Stallions on the sideline and with Jim Harbaugh on the sideline. So in terms of how my numbers, season long normal numbers, Michigan's number 1 in my power ratings. Ohio State's number 3. These are the top 2 defenses by my numbers. Ohio State, they've been jockeying back and forth. Ohio State took the lead this past week with Michigan giving up, 24 points to Maryland. So Ohio State's back to number 1. Michigan's number 2. Michigan's offense is number 4, and Ohio State's offense is only number 17. And then you mentioned the resumes. I've got Ohio State 2 in my resume rankings, Michigan number 3. So I didn't have a huge problem, obviously, with what the committee did. I still don't have Georgia number 1 like they do, but it's fine. The line on this game, 3.5, right where your numbers have it. So my numbers make this Michigan minus 6.5 with a total of 48. The over-under currently sitting at 46. Now, here's where I'm going to caveat what I just said. Weighing those last 4 games, and mind you, the last 4 games were all common opponents as well. Ohio State and Michigan both played those teams. Weighing those last 4 games more heavily, I would project Ohio State minus 3 here with a total of 42. So just, I'm not a huge, hit you with a bunch of stats kind of guy, but I do want to just point out the difference here in how these teams have performed over the last month. In tempo and opponent adjusted net EPA, Ohio State's 3rd in the country, Michigan's 36th. In tempo and opponent adjusted net points per play, Ohio State is 1st, Michigan's 18th. Tempo and opponent adjusted net yards per point, Ohio State 1st, Michigan 18th. So there's a huge disparity between the Michigan team that we saw the first 2 months of the season and the Michigan team we've seen over the last month. And I would also say Ohio State looks a lot different. And I know I'm going to talk at length about this on Buckeye Talk and probably some in my betting preview on Friday. But to me, TreVeyon Henderson is the X factor in this game. Remember, he didn't play last year in the game. Ohio State was down to their 3rd, 4th string running back in Chip Trayanum last year. So I think TreVeyon Henderson is the X factor. Michigan has been awesome season long. Their metrics are great. They're a great team. If they won the game, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. This is not me dumping on Michigan. But I do think, and this is really me speaking from a betting perspective, don't look at my number of Michigan minus 6.5 and be like, oh, the line's 3.5. That's free money, because there's a lot of metrics right now, recent metrics that are saying maybe that team's not that's not the team that's going to show up on Saturday. So just be on alert for that. That's all I'm saying. Again, I love this rivalry. Pay a lot of respect to it. I'm wearing my Ohio State, jersey hoodie with the Michigan background. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that. I got the big house as my background while I'm wearing an Ohio State shirt. So I really respect this rivalry. I love it. I was in the big house in 2021 in the snow. Had to participate in that. And I don't know if I've said this on the show yet this year, especially since the Connor Stallion stuff, but I did just want to point out when I was at that game, the Michigan fans behind us all game, just periodically for no reason, would yell out, "Cheaters, cheaters." And the whole time, like, I thought they were talking about Ohio State, but maybe I had it wrong.
That's amazing.
So that was coming from Michigan fans. So it was just funny, like, thinking back on that experience. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. My nerves have been on 10 all week. So I'm trying to keep myself busy and keep my mind off of it as much as possible. But again, I've been deep diving these numbers. I'm like, there's just a lot to unpack there. So, if you think what Michigan's done the last few weeks is like a smokescreen, then ignore the second part of what I said. But if you think maybe they're impacted by not having Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines and not having, the other team's signs, then, you might want to pay attention to that second part more so than the first. But Kelley, that's going to do it for our marquee matchups. Unless you have anything to add here at the end, we'll get into our rapid fire.
No, just like you said, it's the best week of the season, the regular season, the postseason. It doesn't matter. It's the best week of the college football season. I'm very excited. I'm very nervous. It's one of those weeks where my mood is impacted for potentially days, right? And so I've said this on other shows. I think I've tweeted this, like, don't text me, don't call me, don't email me, don't tweet at me, don't DM me, don't do any of that stuff. You can if you want. My phone's off during this game, and it remains off if Ohio State loses for TBD amount of time. It depends on how the game goes. So yeah, I get too invested in it. Probably it's what fans do, fanatics, right? That's what it stands for. So I love it. It's great when you lead into it because everybody's hopeful and nervous at the same time. It's better at the end when you win. It's a billion times worse when you lose. I got so used to Ohio State winning the game that I remember in 2021, and you were there, man. I remember thinking, like, what do I do? Like, it had been a decade. It had been so long since Ohio State had lost that game. I was just like, this is crushing. And it was one time. Then I started thinking about Michigan fans. I was like, holy cow, how do they do this year after year? Well, now it's been 2 in a row. And it's been since 2019. And I'm over here thinking, can my heart take 0-3 in the last 3 years against Michigan? Like, man, it's just I'm excited. Let's do it. I can't wait. But I know we got rapid fires.
And one last thing, if Ohio State does lose, I take full responsibility because before the 2020 Sugar Bowl against Clemson, I was watching it with my brother, and I was like, I would trade 3 Michigan losses because I didn't, in my mind, like you said, at that point, you almost take it for granted. I was like, I would take 3 Michigan losses to beat Clemson tonight. And Ohio State took Clemson to the woodshed and hasn't beaten Michigan since. So if they lose, the good news is if they do lose, this is the last, my deal with the devil expires after this week. So
Tyler,
just keep that in mind.
That is actually amazing, though. Yes, you are to blame. I swear, dude, if Ohio State loses this one and then wins in 2024, you gotta figure out you're talking to somebody who's got some real power here, dude. That's amazing. Very, very cool inside comment there with your brother. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You sold your soul for the Clemson win. You didn't even sell it for the national championship.
Yeah, but I live 40 minutes from Clemson's campus, and I was so sick of dealing with what we've dealt with, the last couple of years with the Michigan side. It was like that with Clemson because they owned us at the time. So, I was dealing with that. So, there's a lot to unpack. I'm a complicated guy, Kelley.
Clearly.
All right, let's get into these rapid fires. Washington hosting Washington State. Line currently sitting Washington minus 16.5 with an over-under of 68. I project Washington minus 17.5 with a total of 59. So I'm probably going to be on this under. I do like it. I think it dropped a half a point this morning from 68.5 to 68. So I do expect to grab grab this under here at some point this week.
I mentioned earlier my affinity for the Apple Cup. I'm excited that they've extended this rivalry into the future. My numbers in this one have Washington minus 17.5. It's a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. It is in Seattle, so that is working to the Huskies' advantage. I don't think they're looking ahead to Oregon or still Arizona on the outside chance in the Pac-12 championship game. I don't think they're looking ahead to the CFP. I think they're going to take care of business. I expect Washington to get it done in this one. But again, rivalry games, you never count them out. Washington minus 17.5 is what my numbers say.
Yep. Next one, a big one in the group of 5 in the Mountain West. Boise State, who fired their coach a couple weeks ago, playing well, hosting Air Force, who's kind of fallen off. They've had some injuries. The line currently Boise minus 6.5 with a total of 46.5. So I project this at 3.5. With my season-long metrics, I gave out in my best bets article this week. I gave out the Boise State team total over. I think Boise State might roll here. Air Force is banged up, has not looked like themselves in a few weeks. I think Boise State might roll here, so I don't know how much I trust the number here, and I would be a little bit on the over as well.
I've got Boise State minus 5. It is a 64% chance that Boise State makes it to the Mountain West Championship game. Their most likely opponent there going to be UNLV. My numbers would make that game. It would be at UNLV, most likely. At a game at UNLV, my numbers would make it a pick 'em for Boise State. So still a very good chance. What is that? 32% chance, 35% chance actually by my numbers to win the Mountain West Conference. Pretty remarkable for a team that, as you mentioned, fired their coach just only a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and they fired him after they scored like 40 some points. It was just kind of bizarre. Another big one in the group of 5, Tulane hosting UTSA, who's really come alive here the second half of the season as they've gotten healthy. Tulane currently a 3.5 point favorite with a total of 52. I project Tulane minus 5.5. With a total of 46.5. This is another one though. The way UTSA has played the second half of the season, I think I'm probably undervaluing them a little bit after, we talked about me maybe overvaluing them early in the season. I think that's kind of swung the other way. I think I would maybe be on UTSA here.
I have Tulane minus 4 in this game. It's a win and in situation. The winner here going to be in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. The loser, I think, still has a path if SMU were to lose a game that they're not expected to lose. But Tulane, by my numbers, the favorite to host the championship game now against what would be SMU. My numbers make SMU a favorite in that game. By 6 points. So Tulane, they're the CFP's highest ranked group of 5 team. They have it all in front of them. My numbers think they get it done in this one. They like Tulane by 4.
Next up, Louisville hosting Kentucky. Is there a name for this game, Kelley? Do you know offhand? I feel like there should be. I feel like it should be the Bluegrass Bowl. I don't know if they call it that, but that's what they should call it. Louisville, a 7-point favorite, already penciled into the ACC championship game. Total sitting at 50.5. I project Louisville minus 12 with a total of 51.5. So I don't have much value here on the total, but showing some value on Louisville. Although, like I said, they're already penciled into the conference championship. So I don't know, this is a rivalry game, but also their bigger goals are still ahead of them. So this game's probably a stay away for me from a betting perspective.
It is the Governor's Cup. I do agree it should have something to do with Bluegrass, though. I would like to
Bluegrass
see
Bowl sounds way better.
The Governor's Cup is what we call the winner, or what the winner of this game gets. I have Louisville minus 9 in this game. You mentioned Louisville already booked their place in the ACC championship game. My numbers, they like Louisville by 9 in this one. They would like Florida State by 9. Note, not considering the Jordan Travis absence in Charlotte next week. So Louisville, 74% chance to get it done this week in the Governor's Cup.
I like the segue there. Florida hosting Florida State. So again, this is weird with the injury because our numbers, we don't manually adjust for injuries. Florida State, a 6.5 point favorite with a total of 50 right now. I project 16.5, or I'm sorry, I project Florida State minus 16 with a total of 55. Now, here's the thing to consider also with this game. Florida starting quarterback Graham Mertz is also out with a broken collarbone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really understand this line because you're telling me both teams losing their starting quarterbacks nets out to a 10-point downgrade for Florida State. Like I don't see it. So I may end up betting Florida State here because I think this number is too low. Florida had a kind of devastating loss to Missouri, in the final seconds last week and lost their starting quarterback. I don't know that Florida has the depth to to be able to do this. I think Florida State, who probably needs some style points as well at this point, people are kind of questioning what the committee is going to do with them. I think Mike Norvell might come out and try to get some style points here. I might be on Florida State here before the week's up.
My numbers, I agree with your line of thinking. My numbers have Florida State minus 12.5 in this one. So exactly what you said. I'm not sure that the both teams missing their quarterback is worth what would for me be 6 points. I mean, I don't even think if Mertz was playing and Travis wasn't, that's worth the 6-point swing.
Yeah.
Um,
I was gonna say maybe then, but yeah.
I'm not even going there. So I do think that Florida State minus 6.5 does. It feels like crappy. Like, why is Vegas putting that out there? Like, what am I missing here in this game? It's a rivalry. It's on the road. Florida needs it to be bowl eligible. There's all that going in, but my numbers do like Florida State minus 12.5, not accounting for the quarterback injuries here, of course. 81% chance for Florida State to get it done. My numbers then give them, like I said, they're favored by 9. That's a 73% chance to win in Charlotte next week against Louisville again. Now, that one you could adjust a little bit because Louisville's not missing their quarterback. Florida State, though, they'd have a game under their belt in another week of practice with the new quarterback in there. So we'll see. Florida State definitely, though, the best team in the ACC, I think, with or without Travis.
Yep, agreed. I think just one last note. I think Florida's going to be a trendy public pick here this week. I don't see it. I'm sorry. Again, my brother's a Florida fan. I apologize to him, but I don't know that they're going to get it done. Texas hosting Texas Tech. Texas, played a physical kind of Iowa State type game with Iowa State last week, pulled out, won that and covered. Texas, a 13-point favorite here against the Red Raiders with a total of 54. I project Texas minus 15 with a total of 49.5. So maybe some value here on the under.
I've got Texas minus 15.5. It's a 94% chance that Texas makes it to Arlington, a 68% chance that the Longhorns, win the Big 12 championship. Their most likely opponent in that game right now, based on my projections, is Oklahoma State because of some of the tiebreakers. My numbers would make the Longhorns a 14.5-point favorite against the Cowboys in Arlington.
All right, that's it. That is our Week 13 rivalry week preview. Can't wait. Make sure you follow Kelley on X at KFordRatings. Follow me at TShoeIndex. Make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube channel at Saturday Glory. We'll be back to recap it all on Monday. Gosh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. Again, did want to call out, if you're interested in betting the Ohio State Michigan game, I'm going to have a full betting preview on that at VSiN.com on Friday. So be on the look for that. It's going to be a really big comprehensive betting piece. So it's going to be really cool. Otherwise, until next time, for Kelley Ford, I'm Tyler Shoemaker, and that was Calculated Risk.